Welcome everyone to the first video posted onto this channel for January 1st, 2020. Before we get into the subject of today's video, I have a new video on Moistonia Live concerning a possible candidate for the Labour leadership, and I will be streaming tonight at 8:30 PM GMT over on Twitch, both linked in the description below. Now today I want to talk about a mother, one that is proving quite troubling and difficult to deal with. The mother's name is Lori Vallow. Now she has two children called Joshua Vallow and Tylee Ryan. These children have not been seen since September, and at present Lori Vallow is proving rather troubling to deal with the police. And there are a number of issues about this. These children have been missing since September. The police and investigators believe that Lori Vallow knows either the location of the children or what has happened to them. This is, at time of recording, according to a press release that has been issued on Monday by the Rexburg police, with the release indicating that the police know the children are not with their mother and her husband. To further aid the police, Lori Vallow has decided not only to not work with law enforcement to find the children, but has decided to leave the state. I sense an escalation in the near future concerning a federal bureau, possibly, should the police continue to believe and have enough evidence to confirm that these children are in danger or alive. In the press release, it said that it is astonishing that rather than work with law enforcement to help us locate her own children, Lori Vallow has decided to leave the state with her new husband. An attorney for that family has released a statement with East Idaho News saying that while he's in contact with Lori Vallow and her husband Chad Daybell, he does not have information about the children, with him saying Chad Daybell was a loving husband and has the support of his children in this matter. Lori Daybell is a devoted mother and resents assertions to the contrary, and we look forward to addressing the allegations once they have moved beyond speculation and rumour. CNN, one of the most obviously not fake news outlets ever to exist ever, reached out to the attorney in question but has not received a response, and no charges have yet been filed. To add more to this mystery, with the children being missing and obviously a top priority for investigators to locate, Lori Vallow married Daybell weeks after Daybell's wife was found deceased in her Fremont County home back in October. Initially, it was attributed to natural causes. However, on December 11th, authorities exhumed her remains and now think her death was suspicious, with Vallow's husband also passing away earlier this year. Naturally, they're going to draw a connection and conclusion, theory, hypothesis, something from that. So now you know all of this, we should go back to when the children initially went missing and how it took so long before something happened. This all came about because the police conducted a welfare check on Joshua, who is Vallow's adopted son with her previous husband, and on November 26, after relatives raised concerns about not hearing from him, during the welfare check, Vallow and Daybell told investigators that Joshua was staying with family friends in Arizona. When police returned the next day to execute a search warrant because that was not adequate, I mean, we have the internet, come on, you could have done FaceTime. Daybell and Vallow fled the home, which totally alleviates any and all guilt placed on Lori Vallow and Mr. Daybell. Totally. The investigators later determined that they did not take Joshua with them when they fled and that he was not staying at a friend's house. No doubt the information they provided about the friend in Arizona and contact details yielded results that were equivalent to the contents of an empty bag. To add further confusion to all of this, we've only really spoken about Joshua. We've not referenced the other child, the 17-year-old daughter, Tylee Ryan. The reason for that is because the police have learned that Daybell and Lori Vallow were telling witnesses that Tylee had passed away a year before the death of her father, which investigators have concluded is not true. And Daybell continued to tell other witnesses that Lori Vallow had no minor children. Understandably, the authorities are now seeking that Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell come forward because they are making this worse for themselves. Now, the police have yet to file charges because they are focused on finding those two children, with their primary concern being simply to locate them and then make charging decisions in due course based upon available evidence, with them believing that the children are in harm at present time. If the children are found and any harm has come of them, if it happened in their jurisdiction, they will prosecute whoever caused that harm. The one key thing that bugs me the most is that Laurie Vallow and Chad Daybell have fled the state, because that just reeks of guilt. And I want to add an additional detail that has the police worried. It is that Chad Daybell is the author of a series of books aimed at a Mormon audience that focuses on near-death experiences and doomsday themes, with himself and Laurie Vallow being both contributors to an organization that dabbles in the very same themes. And as an additional note, the welfare check came about because of concerned family, a grandmother no less, who understandably is a tad concerned. It is the same family who, upon alerting the police, also informed them about how Laurie Vallow had changed from being a loving mother to essentially a monster who was busy preparing with a cult who were obsessed with preparing for the end of the world. I'm guessing art imitating life, which is totally unacceptable. There's pills for that, by the way. And doctors. Lots of doctors. One should never force their beliefs onto others, especially children. Because of the nature of this case, the main concern is finding the children. Secondary will be to find the parent and the stepfather at the first opportunity, provided the children are found first. I bring this here to the halls of justice because I'm very confused, because we can't judge anything truly until they are found, the children that is, until we know what has come of them. So I put it to you, based on what I have linked down below and what I have said in this video, I would very much like to know what you think should happen, because this one's a bit strange. It's like limbo. I hope, and I say this outright, that the children are found safe, unharmed, and away from possible monsters based on family statements. And it will certainly be very interesting to see how this all plays out, provided those children are found alive. Let's not think about the negative. Expect the worst, but hope for the best, after all. Now, if I don't see you over on Twitch tonight at 8:30 GMT PM, I hope you'll have a fantastic Wednesday. And thank you all for listening.
Omegon.
Okay, not entirely done. I figured I'd take the opportunity to shill my reading channel because I'm trying to get it monetized and it's tricky. So, as the video, as you noticed, is a bit longer, yeah, I'm going to play one of the videos from that channel, and if you are at all interested in more stories, the channel link to Moisky Reads is in the description down below. Nice. The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I'd been. and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Mad men know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded. With that caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man during the whole week before I killed him, and every night about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh, so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, oh, so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye, and this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he passed the night. So you see, he would have been very profound old man indeed to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hands moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think that there I was opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch with the thick darkness, for the shutters were close fastened through fear of robbers, and so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently, I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief, oh no. It was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night just at midnight when all the world slept, it was welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in his bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney, it is only a mouse crossing the floor, or it is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. It was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I waited a long time, very patiently without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a simple dim ray like the thread of a spider shot from out the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray as if by instinct precisely upon the damned spot. And I have not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the sense? Now I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain that ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say louder, every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous, so I am. And now at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still, but the beating grew louder and louder. I thought the heart must burst, and now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbour. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes the heart beat on with that muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was a stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If still you think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned and I worked hastily but in silence. First of all I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. Ha! When I had made an end of these labours, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbour during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures secure undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But ere long, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But still they sat and still chattered. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definiteness, until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I now grew pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice. Yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men, but the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards, but the noise arose over all and continually increased. It grew louder, 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 and still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, no. They heard. They suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die, and now and again hark louder, 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 and louder. Villains, I shrieked, dissemble no more. I admit the deed, tear up the planks. Here is the beating of his hideous heart.